I'm so happy to have Meriem Lamara over here. She's my PhD colleague as well. And she would be talking today about, though I don't know how is that. Okay. In the remembrance of the name of Allah, do the hearts find peace. Investigating the practice of meditation in Islam. All right.
Thank you.
On to you.
Yes.
Put the mic.
Okay. Bear with me just a second as I put this. Okay, so yeah, I'll be talking about meditation and mindfulness in Islam. My area of research is far away from any of the things that I'm going to talk about today. I specialize in Gothic literature, so definitely not meditation or mindfulness. I'm an English student and I'm part of the English and Creative Writing department, so my people read their papers. So I apologize for that, but I'll be reading from my paper. Meditation defined broadly as the practice of mindfulness or as the act of engaging in mental exercise in order to achieve spiritual awareness. Includes a variety of techniques and practices informed by traditional religious roots and beliefs. Almost every world religion has a strand of thought and practice that proves that being mindful, present in the moment, has a value in helping the self to better itself. In Islam, the practice of meditation is still, as it is commonly known today, so it's still debatable for while a number of Muslim scholars still question whether the Quran and the teaching of the Prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him, approve of the practice of meditation. Other Muslim scholars have contended that its practice is not permissible in Islam at all. Yet meditation, or as it is referred to in Arabic as muraqabah, is not alien to Islam. Indeed, along with daily prayers, and I'll go back to prayers in an instant, meditation and the remembrance of Allah, as well as the reflection on the wonders and beauty of His creation, is highly encouraged. Moreover, the Quran provides several examples that express the concept of meditation. In the Islamic context, then, mindfulness is the virtue of muraqabah, a word which is derived from the root meaning to watch, to observe, or to regard attentively. That is, in a Muslim state of muraqabah, there is a continuous full knowledge that Allah, God, is aware of the person that is practicing muraqabah, inwardly and outwardly. It is a complete state of vigilant self-awareness in one's relationship with God, in heart, mind, and body. The basis of muraqabah, then, is our knowledge that Allah is always watching us all the time. And as a consequence, we develop greater attention and care for our own actions, thoughts, feelings, and inner states of being. As Allah said in Surah Al-Baqarah, and I'm quoting from the Quran, remember that God knows what is in your souls, so be mindful of Him. So what are the ways in which in which a Muslim can practice muraqabah or meditation and mindfulness? So the first thing is, and I've mentioned it earlier, and that's salat or prayer. So prayer in Islam, and salat is the Arabic word, and that's the preferred word for Muslim. We don't go with prayer often, so we go with salat. So prayer is performed 5 times a day, and it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, which are testimony of faith, then comes prayer, charity, fasting, and pilgrimage. And there are different verses in the Quran that speak of the importance of prayer in Islam, and I've only selected 2 of them, which you can read here, and they're both from Surah Al-Baqarah. So salat in itself can take from 5 minutes to an hour, depending on the need of the person who's performing salat, and depending on why they're praying. Salat is used as a way to concentrate on God, Allah, as well as the afterlife, instead of focusing on the everyday anxieties and pursuits that fill your consciousness. So, while in salat, you are letting go of everything that clouds your mind at that moment, and you are going into that state of meditation, that is salat, as pure as you can be. So, for instance, salat follows. I wouldn't say a practice. So you begin your salat in a standing position, then it is followed by a bow, and finally full prostration, which is called rak'ah in Arabic. So the idea of salat is basically a communication between human beings, the self, and God. The prayer ritual, therefore, is an expression of a dialogue between the creator and the self, human self. So regular prayer is a means of remembrance, of being mindful of God's presence and our responsibility for ourselves and for our fellow creatures. And it also means a means of purification of ourselves and finding direction and thereby to come closer to Allah. While performing salat, Muslims obviously read the Quran, and reading the Quran is in itself, which is called al-dhikr, or remembrance in English. So reading the Quran in itself is a rewarding means of meditation. As Allah said, and I'm quoting from the Quran again, "This is a blessed scripture which we have sent down to you, so that people may think about its message and those with understanding take heed." End of quote. So the practice of reciting the Quran is in itself a practice of mindfulness. When reciting the Quran, the individual follows rules of recitations, from controlling one's breathing, following the notes of different verses. So there are higher notes, middle notes, and there are lower notes. And after every ayah or verse, the person has to stop and reflect what has been said and what he has read in the Quran. In addition to, and I haven't put it in the PowerPoint, but that's fine. So in addition to reading the Quran, reciting the Quran, and dhikr, there is another different kind of dhikr, which is not reading the Quran from the book itself, but reciting adkar or tasabih, and these are words that you can find them again in the Quran, but you don't have to read them from the book. So it's reciting these words over and over again. There are rules which cite that most of them are recited for 33 times after every rak'ah, but you can do it as much as you can throughout the day. So in Islam, when God's name is constantly repeated, it is known as dhikr. It can also be the repetition of his attributes. Short passages from the Quran, again, are also often repeated. This is performed after completing the ritual of prayer or salat, and you remain kneeling on the mat that you prayed on. You can also use your prayer, so you can remain in your rak'ah position. It's hard to explain without doing it, and I can't really perform it right now, but that's the thing. You've seen Muslims praying before, so you know what that is. So dhikr can be performed anywhere, as long as it's a place where you can have peace and quiet. And I have a quote here by Ibn al-Qayyim in Madarij al-Salikin, where he states that muraqabah, again mindfulness, is to be devoted to the names of the watcher, al-Raqib, the guardian, al-Hafid, the knowing, al-Alim, and the hearing, al-Sami', and the seeing, al-Basir. And these are all names of Allah. Thus, whoever understands these names, and is devoted to fulfilling them will require muraqabah, mindfulness. So, just on a side note, we Muslims believe that God has 99 names, and we learn them all by heart, and we usually use them every day. So, and also on another side note, just to refer to Sufism, because I know that people would be expecting to hear a little bit about Sufism in talk of Islam and meditation. I am not including much on Sufism, just because I don't have the time to do it. But like many Muslim Islamic aspects, Sufism practice of dhikr has been surrounded by intense controversy. On the one hand, there have been fierce debates concerning specific technical features of dhikr, including the use of versus non-use of chanting, music, drums and dancing, and the question of silent versus vocal and individual versus communal practice of dhikr, and also the use of body in dhikr. So although salat and dhikr are not strictly considered to be meditative practices by followers of Islam, they are used as a means of purifying one's soul and in a symbolic way. Similar to traditional meditation then, these Islamic methods of worship have a spiritual as well as practical end. Spirituality, in spirituality, it acts as a reminder of one's place before God, as well as the world. Practically, it helps in elevating all the daily stress, tension, anxiety that we may experience. So it always comes hand in hand with the thought that Allah is constantly telling us to pay attention to the world around us, to nature, for the signs of Allah are in His creation, so all around us. Other ways of performing muraqabah is to follow these rules. So there are 4 rules here, and then there are another 6 that I will just mention later. So the first one is a knowledge of Allah, a knowledge of God. So our knowledge of God comes only from understanding which He Himself gave to us through Quran or through the teachings of Muhammad, peace be upon him. The second one is the knowledge of the enemy of Allah, and that's call him Satan, the devil, Shaitan. So we have always to remember that we are constantly being pushed our limits by our daily life, but also by spiritual forces which come in the face of Satan. Then there is the knowledge of one's soul, and that's basically related with the knowledge of Iblis. And finally, there is a knowledge of the deeds to be done for the sake of Allah. And there is another quote by Ibn al-Qayyim in which he says that muraqabah as the reality of pure heart, al-qalb salim, by which no one is saved but by coming to Allah with it. So it's always related to the fact that we are connected to Allah. And there are the other 6. So these are tadabbur, or seeking the wisdom in knowledge. Then there is tafakkur, reflecting on what one knows and observes. Then there is tasabbur, consistent practice with gratitude, which is very important in Islam. Then there is tazkiyah, which is the purification of one's heart. And tashakkur, again, gratitude. And taqwa, which is the last one, and that's being mindful of the divine. So, and I'm quoting Ibn al-Qayyim again, I don't have it on the slide, in which he says, mindfulness represents the rays of inner sun, our inner sun, which only seeks to bring light, growth, and happiness to all that it touches. Ibn al-Qayyim has provided several examples in the book that I've mentioned before, that's Madarij al-Salikin. And he said that an integral part of our preparation for the hereafter, or the life after death, is by reflecting, and that's tafakkur, remembering, and that's tadakkur, examining, that's another, meditating, and that's ta'ammul, and then contemplating and deliberating. Each of these words represents different shades of mental activity that can be considered forms of meditation. There is a considerable overlap in the meaning among all of them, in that they are all related. And I quote again, and I'm not sure if I have it here. No? Okay, so I'll just read it in here. So I'm quoting Ibn al-Qayyim, and he says, it is called reflection because it is that which is utilized of the thought and its procurement during it. It is called remembrance because it is reflecting of knowledge, which must be considered after being distracted or absent from it. It's called meditation because it's repeatedly examining again and again until it becomes evident and uncovered in our own hearts. And it is called contemplation, or taking lessons, because one takes a lesson from it to apply elsewhere. And it is called deliberation because it is examining the conclusion of matters, their ending, and their consequences, and deliberating on them. End quote. So in sum, my presentation is very short. So just to conclude then, although meditation in Islam is still viewed as debatable, it's very present in our everyday life. Some Muslims are understandably hesitant or skeptical about the word or the use of the word meditation because there are so many different types of meditation, some of which are specifically associated with religious beliefs and practices that contradict the thoughts of Islam. But the fact of the matter, however, is that our righteousness precedes everything else. And even considering the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, before he became a prophet, there are several stories mentioning how he would just retrieve himself to Cave Hira, and he would just meditate there and think about the Creator, the One. And by doing that, he kind of established this link, this connection with Allah, even before he knew that he was one of the prophets, or that he was going to bring the message of Islam to humankind. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Meriem. Can we have questions now? Any questions? Oh, everybody's waiting for food.
Well, just thank you for sort of
Thank you.
You got one question here.
no question, just thank you.
Yeah. Robert, yeah.
Okay. It's just a general question, but why do you repeat the attributes of God in the prayer? And what is the relation when you attain the final state of prayer or meditation or whatever? Is it an equal to equal? Is it God to worshiper? How does it go?
So we don't usually repeat the attributes during the prayer itself. So the prayer is very strict. So it's reading the Quran and then performing the practice of prayer. There is no nothing alien that comes into it. But repeating the attributes, that's what you do in your everyday life. Because as I said before, there are 99 names, and they are all attributes. They are names, at the same time they are attributes of Allah, God. So we repeat them. So there is, for instance, there is a Rahim, that's the merciful. So if you're doing something and that's what you want to express, that's the word that you would use for Allah. You wouldn't say Allah, you would say Rahim. And that's what I meant by repeating his attributes. And for the act of meditation itself in Islam, we are not encouraged to see ourselves as part of Allah, but just as communicating with Allah, as being in touch with Him. That's it. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any more questions anybody has?
Or you can ask me during lunch.
Or you can ask her during your lunch. So let's have one more round of clap for Meriem. Thank you very much.